The village of Telra sat quietly between the hills and the dark woods, and no one ever thought anything strange would come from the trees because nothing ever did. The people lived simple lives and worked during the day and rested during the night, and the children laughed and played under the sun while the elders watched from their porches with smiles on their faces. But one night everything changed. It began with a scream from the eastern side of the village where the woods touched the edge of the last house. The scream was loud and sharp, and it cut through the quiet like a blade through cloth, and it made the lights in every house turn on at once. People came out of their homes with lamps and flashlights, and some with old rifles from the time of the last space war. They ran toward the scream but found no blood and no body, and only deep claw marks on the walls of a small wooden house that belonged to the baker and his family. The door was torn like paper, and the fence was crushed, and the ground was full of huge footprints that did not belong to any known animal. No one could speak for a moment, and then the baker's wife began to cry, and the guards whispered to each other with shaking hands. A young boy said he saw something in the dark. He said it had glowing yellow eyes and skin like rock and teeth like blades, and it walked on 4 legs but stood like a man when it looked at him. No one believed him at first. They thought he was scared and making stories, but the look in his eyes said it was not a story. That night the people locked their doors and windows and sat inside with lights off and weapons close. The wind blew hard from the woods, and it carried a strange smell like burnt metal and something rotten. Even the animals were silent, and the night birds did not sing. Morning came slowly, and when the sun rose over the hills, the people stepped out and looked at what had happened during the night. 3 more homes had claw marks and broken fences, but no one was hurt and nothing was stolen, and the strange footprints led back into the woods. Everyone asked the same question, but no one had an answer. What was it, and why did it come? The mayor of the village was a man named Len, and he was old but strong, and he had fought in the space war and had seen many strange things. He stood in front of the crowd and raised his hand and said they must not panic, but they must be ready. He told the village guards to stay awake at night and keep watch from the towers, and he told the people to stay inside after sunset. Some villagers wanted to leave and some wanted to call for help from the capital, but the mayor said they must wait and see if it comes again. But deep down everyone knew it would. That night the village held its breath as the sun went down and the sky turned red and then black. The guards took their places with heavy jackets and rifles, and the people sat in the dark with candles and prayers. Then just after midnight came the sound again. Not a scream but a low growl like thunder under the earth, and it came from the woods. The guards aimed their rifles at the trees but saw nothing, and then came the sound of footsteps. Heavy, slow, and steady. Something big moved between the trees and then into the open fields. The guards fired warning shots, but the thing did not stop and it did not run. It moved like it did not care about bullets or men. Then it turned and vanished into the darkness like a ghost. When the guards went to the fields, they found the ground torn and the grass flattened and the footprints again. Bigger this time. Wider and deeper. Whatever it was growing stronger, or it was just starting to show itself. The guards did not speak for a long time, and when they did their voices were quiet. They said it was not human and not animal, and it was not afraid. The villagers heard the news in the morning, and many were afraid to speak at all. The children were told not to play outside, and the windows were covered, and the laughter was gone. Only silence remained. But the young girl named Mira looked out from her window and wondered what kind of beast walks without fear and why it does not hurt anyone. And in her small hand she held a cookie she had saved from yesterday, and in her heart she felt no fear, only curiosity. And that was the first night of fear in Telra, and it would not be the last. The village of Telra had not slept for 2 nights, and on the 3rd morning the sun rose behind gray clouds, and the people stepped out with tired eyes and quiet steps, and they looked at the fields and at the trees and listened to the wind that moved through the woods like a whisper without a voice. Mayor Len walked through the village square with 2 guards beside him, and he did not speak to anyone, but he looked at the claw marks on the ground and at the broken fence near the old storage barn where the beast had passed again in the night. He stopped in front of a tall pole where an old space beacon had been sleeping for years, covered in dust and spider webs and forgotten by all. But now it blinked slowly with a red light and made a soft sound like a warning, and the mayor's face changed as he saw it, and he told the guards to clear the square and bring the council to the old town hall. Inside the hall the air was cold and heavy, and the beacon blinked again and again, and the mayor placed his hand on the old glass cover, and the machine hummed and showed a message in a strange language from the time before the village was built. It was an alien language that few could read, but the mayor had seen it once before during the last space conflict when a ship crashed on the red moon of Tracher and he helped decode the same symbols. He called for the translator tablet hidden in the basement and connected it to the beacon, and slowly the words changed into something they could understand, and what they saw made the room fall silent. Alert: Corlith lifeform detected. Containment failed in Sector 17. Do not approach without emotional stabilizers. Avoid sudden sound or aggressive movement. Specimen reacts strongly to fear, joy, and pain. Control only possible through peaceful emotional output. Laughter has calming effect. The council stared at the words and then at each other, and the mayor rubbed his hands together and said they were dealing with something not just wild but something created. A living weapon from the stars. Not a monster but a tool made for battle. He had heard rumors of Corlith beasts before during his younger years in the service. Weapons made by the ancient warlords of a lost planet. Beasts that learned from their surroundings and became stronger from feelings. Beasts that could break ships with their claws and listen to minds with their senses. And now one of them was here on Earth in Telra, walking through a small village like a shadow in the dark. The mayor told the council not to speak of this to the people just yet because panic would only feed the fear and the fear would feed the beast. But outside the people were already talking and guessing and worrying. Someone had seen the beacon blink and someone else had seen the guards carrying weapons they had not used in years. At the same time, a strange energy came from the woods again. The air shimmered near the trees like heat above fire, and the animals ran from the forest and hid under carts and stairs and roofs. That evening the mayor made a quiet trip with 2 scouts into the woods where the trees stood thick and tall and the wind never blew. They followed the strange signals from the beacon until they reached a small clearing, and there they found something that looked like a cracked pod or escape shell made of dark silver and glowing wires. It was partly buried in dirt and covered with alien writing and burn marks, and it had a hole in one side big enough for something large to crawl out. Inside the pod they found pieces of soft metal and old lights and more warnings scratched into the walls. They all said one thing: the beast was not meant to survive. The beast was supposed to be locked away. And now it was awake and free. The mayor touched the wall of the pod, and it felt warm, like it had not been empty for long. He turned to the scouts and told them to leave markers and then return to the village fast because the night was coming and they could not be here when the beast returned to this place. Back in the village, the people waited with candles and questions. The guards moved quietly along the rooftops and towers, and the mayor did not speak of the pod or the beacon, but he called for volunteers to help build stronger walls and traps around the edge of the village. Some agreed. Some refused. Some just held their children and prayed for the night to pass without fear. But the beast came again. Not with sound but with silence. One by one the guards noticed the lights flicker and the air change and the dogs begin to shake and whimper. Then something heavy moved along the north wall where a wooden house stood alone near the old windmill. A crash broke the quiet and the house roof fell in and people screamed from their windows. The guards fired lights into the sky and one flare lit the beast for only a second. It was tall now, much taller than before. Its back was lined with sharp stones like armor, and its arms reached past its knees, and its skin was cracked like dried earth, and glowing under the cracks was a soft blue light. But its eyes were yellow and wide and full of something that was not hate and not hunger but something else. Pain maybe, confusion maybe, or just loneliness. Then the beast turned and leapt into the darkness again before anyone could follow. The next day the village gathered and asked the mayor what he saw in the woods and why the beacon was blinking and what the beast really was. The mayor looked at them all and knew the truth was too heavy for some, but hiding it would not help now. He told them what the message said. He told them about Corlith and the pod and the warning about emotions. He told them the beast feeds on fear and listens to joy and might be calmed by laughter. No one laughed. Not yet. But one small girl listened closely from the back of the crowd. Her name was Mira, and she remembered what she saw from her window. She remembered the eyes of the beast and how it looked at her not with anger but with something softer. She remembered how it did not break her window. And she remembered how she laughed when she saw it because she was not scared. And she remembered how it froze when she laughed and tilted its head like it was trying to understand. That night Mira sat by her window again with a cookie in her hand and waited not with fear but with a quiet hope. And far beyond the trees the beast opened its eyes and began to walk again toward the one human that did not scream. The village of Telra held its breath every night now, and even during the day the air felt thick and heavy, like the clouds above were waiting for something to happen, and the birds no longer sang the same songs, and the wind moved through the trees with a quiet warning. Children were kept inside and doors were locked even when the sun was up, and no one dared to walk too close to the forest where the beast had last been seen. But there was one child who did not feel fear the way others did. Her name was Mira, and she was only 8 years old, with wide eyes and messy hair, and a laugh that used to ring through the village every morning until the night the beast came. Now her laugh had become a whisper, and her days were quiet, but her curiosity had not faded. Mira was not like the others because she did not believe the beast was evil or hungry or here to destroy. She believed it was sad. She had watched it from her window once. She saw its eyes glowing through the trees and the way it stood still when it saw her. Not moving, not attacking, just watching. She had laughed softly that night, a nervous laugh, not one of joy but of wonder. And she remembered how the beast tilted its head like it was listening, like it understood. And then it left. She told her parents what she saw and how the beast did not scare her, and they told her not to say such things because people were afraid and fear was stronger than truth. But Mira could not forget the way it looked at her. Like it wanted something, like it needed something. So the next evening, when her parents were busy talking to neighbors about traps and defenses and warnings from the sky, she took a cookie from the jar. It was warm and sweet with pieces of fruit inside, and she wrapped it in a cloth and placed it in her pocket. Then she slipped out the back door and walked quietly to the edge of the village where the trees stood tall and dark like silent giants. She sat down near the broken fence where the beast had passed before and waited with her knees pulled close and her heart beating fast. The sky turned orange and then purple and then black, and the stars blinked one by one. The wind carried the scent of soil and smoke and the distant hum of the warning beacon still blinking in the village square. Mira did not move. She held the cookie tightly and kept her eyes on the woods. She whispered to herself that she was not afraid, that it was just a creature, that maybe it was lonely. And then she heard it, a soft sound, not a growl, not a roar, but the sound of leaves moving, of something large stepping slowly and carefully. She stood up and looked into the trees. 2 yellow eyes appeared between the branches. The beast had come. It did not charge or run. It stepped forward into the moonlight, and its body looked even larger than before, with cracks along its stone skin glowing faint blue like water under ice. Its face was long and sharp, with teeth hidden behind lips that did not snarl. Its arms were long and heavy, and its chest moved with slow breathing. Mira did not run. She stepped closer and unwrapped the cookie and held it in both hands like an offering. The beast watched. Its head tilted again. Its eyes narrowed. It took 1 step closer and then another. Its heavy feet pressed deep into the ground but made no sound. Now it stood only a few steps away from the little girl. Mira smiled. She said hello. Her voice was soft and clear, and it echoed in the silence. The beast did not answer, but it lowered itself slightly and reached out one long clawed hand. Mira lifted the cookie. The claw touched it. Not fast. Not rough. Slow and gentle, like it was afraid to break it. The cookie left her hand and sat in the beast's palm. It raised it to its face and sniffed. Then it made a sound. A low sound. Not a growl but something deeper, like a rumble of surprise. It opened its mouth and ate the cookie in one slow bite. Then it looked at her again. And Mira laughed. This time it was real. It was soft and bright and full of joy. The kind of laugh only a child can make. The beast made the low sound again. Its mouth opened slightly and the corners moved upward just a little. Not a smile. Not really. But close. Mira sat down in the grass. The beast sat too. They looked at each other. Neither moved for a long time. Then the wind changed. It brought the sound of voices from the village. The beast stood. It looked toward the lights. Then back at Mira. It made another sound. A soft one. Then turned and walked back into the woods. The branches closed behind it like a curtain. Mira stayed there for a while, looking at the place where it had vanished. The cookie was gone. But the fear was gone too. She walked back to her house where her mother was crying and her father was calling her name. When they saw her they ran and held her and scolded her and asked where she had gone. She told them she was at the fence, that she saw the beast, that she gave it a cookie. They did not believe her. They thought she was confused, that her young mind had dreamed it. But she knew the truth, and the beast knew it too. That night nothing was broken in the village. No fences, no homes, no sounds of claws or heavy steps, just silence and peace, and one little girl who slept with a smile on her face, because she was not afraid anymore, and because she had made a friend, a very big one. The next night Mira returned to the same place where she had given the cookie to the beast, and the sky was clear and filled with stars, and the village was still and cold as if holding its breath again. She wore the same jacket and carried the same backpack, but this time she brought 2 cookies wrapped in cloth and a flashlight that barely worked and a quiet smile that only a child with wonder could carry. No one saw her leave and no one stopped her, and the guards on the rooftops were watching the western tree line where shadows always moved too fast to catch. Mira stepped through the broken fence and walked past the old tree stump where the grass had been flattened the night before by heavy feet, and she sat down and waited with the cookies in her lap and her eyes on the trees. The stars blinked above her and the moon was full and yellow and the wind had no voice tonight and even the bugs had gone quiet. She waited for a long time. Then she heard the first sound. It was not loud. It was soft and slow like someone breathing in the dark, and it came from the trees. Mira looked up and saw 2 yellow eyes appear between the branches, and they did not blink. The beast stepped out. Its skin was darker now, and the cracks in its arms glowed a brighter blue like something inside it was waking up. Its arms were thick and strong, and its legs bent backward like an animal, but it moved with care, and its eyes never left Mira. She stood up and held the cookies in her hands and smiled again. The beast stopped. It lowered its body slightly. Then it took 1 step forward. And then another. It moved slow like before and stopped just in front of her. Mira held up 1 cookie. The beast reached out its claw. It was a big claw, long and sharp and shaped like a hand made of stone and shadow. But it moved gently. It took the cookie from her hand like a teacher picking a leaf from a child's palm. Then it did something new. It sat. Its heavy body settled into the grass and the earth made a soft crunch under its weight. Mira smiled wider. She offered the second cookie. The beast took it too. This time it looked at her longer before eating. Then it made a sound. A deep soft growl like a purr mixed with thunder. Mira laughed. She could not help it. The beast tilted its head again. Then it made a shorter sound. A strange noise from deep in its throat. It sounded like an attempt at laughter, like it was trying to copy her. Mira clapped her hands. She pointed to herself and said her name slowly. Mira. The beast blinked. She said it again. Mira. It did not speak, but it placed its claw on the ground and drew a shape. It looked like a circle with a crack through it. Then it tapped its chest. Then the circle again. Mira tilted her head. Was it a name? A word? She did not know. But she smiled and nodded, and the beast gave another low sound that almost felt like a laugh. Then something strange happened. A light flashed far away. A bright white light from the hills beyond the woods. The beast stood up fast. It looked toward the light and made a deep growl that shook the grass. Mira stepped back. Not in fear, but in surprise. The beast looked at her. It made a short sound. Then it turned and walked into the woods again. Faster this time, like it had somewhere to go. Mira stood alone with her heart beating fast and her hands shaking slightly. She looked toward the light in the hills, then back to the woods. Then she walked home quietly. The next morning the village was filled with noise. The mayor had called a meeting in the square. Something had been seen in the hills. A strange metal object had landed or crashed beyond the tree line. The guards were gathering supplies to go check. Some people thought it was another piece of the beast's ship. Others feared it was more beasts. The mayor said no one would go until they knew it was safe. But Mira knew. She knew something had changed in the beast. It was faster now, stronger, more alert. It had felt something when the light came, like a memory or a command. She sat on the porch of her house and drew the symbol the beast had scratched in the dirt. The broken circle. She stared at it for a long time. That evening Mira went back again. This time she did not bring cookies. She brought paper, and chalk, and a small mirror. She sat at the edge of the woods and waited. Took longer than before. But the beast came. It looked tired. Its glow was dimmer. Its movements slower. It sat across from her without sound. Mira drew the circle on the paper and pointed at it. The beast looked, then tapped its chest again. Then the paper. Then it picked up the chalk and began to draw beside her mark. It drew stars. Then a shape that looked like a cage. Then it circled the cage. Then it scratched a line through the cage. Mira watched. She did not understand every part, but she felt the meaning. The beast had been locked away, escaped, fled, and now it was waiting. Mira picked up the mirror. She held it up to the beast. It looked at its reflection, and did not move. Its face was cracked like stone, but the eyes were full of something deep and strange. Not rage, not sadness, something old. Mira smiled. The beast leaned closer, and for the first time, it placed its claw on the ground beside her. Not as a threat, but as a sign, like a greeting, or a promise. They sat like that until the moon rose. Then the beast stood, made the soft growl again, and walked back into the trees. Mira stood too. She looked at the paper, at the shapes, and at the claw mark beside her foot. She whispered good night, and turned toward the village. That night the guards saw no movement. The beacons stayed silent, and the only sound in the wind was the laugh of a little girl walking home. The crash shook the hills beyond the woods, and the sound rolled across the land like thunder from a sky that had no storm, and the ground trembled beneath the feet of every villager in Telra as a strange light lit the night for a single breath before fading into silence. No fire followed. No smoke rose. Only that short burst of white light and a deep hum that lasted a few seconds, and then nothing. The people came out of their homes holding lanterns and blinking at the dark horizon, and some whispered that the beast had returned, and some said something else had arrived. Mayor Len climbed the north watchtower with a pair of old binoculars and pointed them toward the place beyond the trees where the light had come from, and he said he saw a shape in the distance like a broken star on the earth with a glow around its edges. He called for the scouts and told them to prepare quietly, and at dawn they would leave for the crash site with 2 guards and a medic and a machine that could scan alien signals. The villagers gathered near the square and asked if they were in danger, and the mayor said no with a strong voice, but Mira, who stood near the back, could see the way his hands trembled behind his coat. That morning the team moved fast through the woods, and Mira watched them go from her hidden spot under the old bridge, where she sat with her backpack full of papers and small things she had collected since her first meeting with the beast. It had not come to her last night, and she felt something cold in her chest, like part of her was missing, like a friend had forgotten her. She waited until the team was far ahead, and then she followed carefully, using the quiet paths she knew from her childhood games and the stories of the forest her grandmother used to tell her. The woods grew darker as she moved closer to the hills, and the light of the sun barely touched the ground through the thick branches, and the air smelled of metal and burnt stone. Soon she reached a ridge where she could see the crash site below, hidden in a bowl of land surrounded by trees and rock, and she gasped without meaning to as her eyes took in the sight. A ship lay broken in the clearing. Not a big one, but sharp and strange and shining with pieces of light that moved like water and walls that pulsed with color like breath. The mayor and the team stood around it with weapons ready, and the scanning machine blinked red and green as it read signals from the broken shell. Then Mira saw something else. Far across the clearing, just at the edge of the trees, stood the beast. It was still and silent, and it watched the ship without blinking, and it looked different now, as if the light from the crash had changed it again. Its glow was stronger and its shape more solid, like it had gained weight or strength, and it did not move even as the team approached the ship. Mira felt her heart beating fast, and she climbed down slowly, keeping to the shadows and hiding behind a fallen tree where she could hear the team talking. The medic said the ship had no life signs inside, but it had energy, and the scan showed it was made by the same technology found in the old pod in the woods. The mayor ordered them to open the main hatch, and inside they found a control panel and a container filled with strange crystals and one small cube with moving lights that looked like it held memories or messages. The scout touched the cube and it lit up. A voice filled the air. It spoke in the same language as the beacon from before. Corlith unit failed to respond. Emotional containment broken. Redirect order sent. Find and reclaim weapon before adaptation completes. Use laughter signal if direct control fails. Mira held her breath as she listened, and her eyes moved to the beast, which had taken one step closer to the clearing. The guards raised their weapons. The mayor shouted for calm. The beast did not charge. It stopped, then lowered its head slightly. Mira ran. She ran into the open space between the team and the beast with her arms up and her voice loud enough to shake the trees. She shouted that it was not here to fight, that it was her friend, that it had come to see the ship because it remembered. The guards froze. The beast looked at her, then at the ship, then at the cube that still glowed in the scout's hand. Mira stepped closer to the beast. She placed her hand on its claw. It made a low sound, a rumble like a sad song without words. The mayor walked slowly to them. He held the cube in both hands. He asked the beast if it remembered. The beast blinked, then raised one arm and pointed to the cube, then tapped its own chest, then drew a symbol in the dirt. The broken circle. The mayor knelt and showed the cube to the beast. The lights shifted. The voice returned. Unit Corlith final stage reached. Stabilization failed. Emotional override required. Deploy joy source. Mira stepped forward and laughed. It was small at first, then bright, then full. The beast made the same deep sound as before. This time longer. This time closer to human. And its glow changed. The cracks on its body pulsed with golden light. The trees around them seemed to listen. The cube blinked 3 times, then shut off. The ship lights faded. The scanning machine went silent, and the wind carried a warm breeze through the clearing. The mayor looked at Mira. He asked what she had done. She said she had done nothing but be a friend. The beast lowered itself to the ground and sat beside Mira and looked at the sky. It made no move to leave. No sound of pain. Only calm. Mira sat too. She opened her backpack and took out a paper. On it was the drawing of the broken circle and the cage and the stars. She handed it to the mayor. He looked at it for a long time, then said nothing, but nodded. That night the team returned to the village. Mira walked beside the beast and no one stopped her. The people came out to watch. No one screamed. No one ran. And the beast walked to the center of the village square and sat under the beacon. It looked at the blinking light, then at the stars above. And it waited, not like a weapon, not like a monster, but like someone who had finally come home. The villagers stood still and silent as the beast sat in the center of the square under the blinking light of the old beacon, and the only sound came from the wind that moved between the houses like a curious visitor. Some held their children close while others gripped tools or old weapons, but no one stepped forward and no one dared to speak. They had seen the beast before from far away or in flashes of light or during moments of fear, but now it sat in the open like a statue of stone and shadow and light, and its eyes were calm and its claws rested on the ground with no threat in them. Mayor Len stood beside Mira, who looked up at the beast like it was a friend from a long story and not something feared in the night, and he did not know what to say or do, so he waited and watched. Mira stepped forward slowly and touched the beast on its arm, and it made a soft sound from deep within like the rumble of a sleeping mountain, and the people flinched, but Mira only smiled and turned to the crowd. She said it would not hurt them, and she said it had never hurt anyone, and she said it had only been watching and waiting and listening because it was alone and afraid and lost. The villagers whispered among themselves, and one of the guards who had once aimed his rifle at the trees lowered his eyes and said maybe it was true. Then a sound broke the quiet. A small boy near the well laughed. Not a big laugh, but a curious one. He had dropped his toy and it rolled near the beast, and the beast had picked it up and held it out with one claw, and the boy found that funny. The beast tilted its head again like it had done with Mira and made the soft rumble sound that was not a growl but something gentler, and the boy laughed louder. Other children peeked from windows and doors, and one by one they stepped out into the open with slow steps and wide eyes, and soon the square was filled with little feet and quiet voices. The beast stayed still and watched them. One child offered a drawing of stars, and another held out a piece of bread, and another showed a music box and turned its key until the small melody filled the air. The beast made that low sound again. The glow on its body softened. Its eyes blinked slowly. It did not speak, but something in the way it moved said it understood. Mira took a chalk stick from her pocket and drew a circle on the stone ground and then drew a line through it and then placed a cookie in the center. The beast looked at the symbol, then looked at Mira, then gently placed one claw beside the cookie. The mayor stepped forward and asked the people to put away their weapons and come closer. He said the beast had been made to respond to emotions. That fear made it dangerous, but peace made it still. That anger gave it strength, but joy gave it balance. That this creature was not just muscle and claws. It was memory and heart and something more. The people moved slowly. They brought food and gifts and blankets. They sat around the square like they used to during festival nights. Someone brought out an old drum. Another played a soft tune on a flute. Children danced in circles. The beast did not dance, but it swayed, its massive body moving just a little from side to side like it could feel the rhythm in the earth. Then the sky changed. Clouds moved aside and stars filled the heavens, and one streak of light passed across the dark sky like a silver tear. The beacon blinked once more, then fell quiet for the first time in days. The mayor looked at the beast and said it could stay. That Telra was not a place of fear anymore. That this village would be its home if it chose to stay. Mira placed her hand on its arm and said the same. The beast did not answer with words, but it lowered its body and rested in the square like a great guardian watching over the people. The night passed without fear, and when morning came the people found the village unchanged. No broken fences, no crushed roofs, no missing animals, only peace. From that day forward things began to shift. The guards no longer patrolled the roofs at night. Children played near the edge of the woods again. And the beast came and went as it pleased, never hiding, never running, only watching, and sometimes sitting beside Mira, while she read from her picture books or drew stars in the dirt. Some scientists from the capital city came to study the beast and brought strange tools and scanners, but the beast ignored them and only responded to laughter and kindness. One day the scientists tried to place a small device on the beast to measure its energy. It growled and the ground cracked beneath it. Mira told them to stop, and they did. After that, the scientists stayed back and simply watched from a distance. They called it the Peacebound Corlith, a name taken from the message in the cube. They said it had passed the stage of rage, that something had changed it, that human emotion had done what machines could not. Mira said it had just made a friend. Weeks passed, then months. The seasons turned, and the beast never left. It helped in small ways, moving heavy things, guarding the village at night, chasing off wild animals. Once it even stopped a flood by blocking a broken riverbank with its own body until the people could repair the wall. They gave it a name that day, Cookie, because of the first gift Mira had given it, and because it made the children laugh. Cookie became part of the village, not just a guest, not just a protector, but family, and Telra became more than a small quiet place near the woods. It became the village where a beast once came in the night, and found laughter, and light, and a home. The stars above Telra glowed brighter than ever, and the night skies were clear and deep and full of stories waiting to be written, and one of those stories had already begun with a beast and a cookie and a child who chose not to run. The village no longer feared the shadows near the woods, and the nights were not filled with whispers of claws or glowing eyes, and instead they were filled with music and warmth and the quiet sound of Cookie's footsteps as he moved slowly through the fields and paths. Cookie was no longer the creature from the dark forest who made soldiers shake and mothers cry and children hide, and now he was the watcher of the night and the keeper of peace and the silent friend of all who lived in Telra. Mira walked beside him most evenings, and they moved through the village like a pair of old companions who needed no words, and the people waved and offered food or gifts or drawings, and Cookie always paused and listened and nodded, and the children always laughed when he tried to hum their songs in his low, strange voice. The broken circle symbol was carved into the stone of the village square, now not as a warning but as a memory, and beside it was a new symbol drawn by Mira, a spiral that meant change and friendship and a promise to protect. Visitors came from far cities and small planets to see Cookie, and they brought machines and questions and theories and hopes, and sometimes fear still flickered in their voices, but when they saw how he sat with the children or helped lift heavy beams for the builders or stood quietly under the stars while Mira told her stories, they understood. One morning a ship appeared in the sky above Telra, sleek and black, and without a sound, and it hovered above the hills like a bird waiting for something, and the village held its breath for the first time in many weeks. The mayor stood at the edge of the square with old armor from his war days, and the guards took their places though their hands shook, and Mira stood beside Cookie, who stared at the ship with steady yellow eyes. The ship did not fire and no soldiers came, and only a single drone floated down from its belly and hovered in front of the village gate. It blinked with a soft blue light and played a message in a language only the mayor could understand. The message said Corlith unit detected. The message said termination or retrieval required. The message said this was not a threat but a warning. Mira stepped forward and raised her hand, and the drone scanned her face and her heartbeat and her voice as she said no. She said Cookie was not a weapon. She said he was part of their world now. She said he had saved them and changed and learned and laughed. The drone paused and blinked again. Then it floated toward Cookie and hovered in front of him, and the light from its center changed color and a sound like music filled the air. Cookie did not move. Then he raised one claw and tapped the drone gently. And the drone powered down and fell to the ground with a quiet thud. The ship above waited for another moment. Then it turned without sound and vanished into the clouds. The people cheered and the children danced, and the mayor removed his armor and smiled for the first time in days. Cookie sat in the square and Mira sat beside him and drew stars on the ground with a stick. That night the stars moved again. Not ships this time but real stars. A shower of light that fell across the sky like silver rain. The villagers watched from rooftops and windows, and Cookie stood tall on the hill beside the beacon, which no longer blinked with warning but with welcome. News spread across planets and stations and colonies that Telra was home to the only known Corlith that had chosen peace over rage and still lived. Offers came, requests, demands. But the mayor said no. Mira said no. Cookie said nothing. He only stayed. One evening a stranger came to the village. She was tall and wore a coat made of starlight fabric, and her eyes held the colors of nebulae, and her voice was soft but clear. She said she had come to see the one who had defied his purpose. She said she had come to understand. She sat with Mira and asked her why she was not afraid when all others had feared. Mira said she had been afraid at first, but she had seen something in Cookie's eyes. Something lost. Something that looked like her when she was alone. The stranger nodded and said sometimes the universe breaks things just to see if someone will try to fix them. Then she left without taking anything, and the wind that followed her smelled like stars. Cookie became a symbol, not of war or fear or danger, but of hope, of change, of second chances. No other Corlith appeared. No other ships returned. And Telra remained a quiet village with one big friend who guarded it with silence and kindness. The children grew up with stories not of monsters but of the time laughter saved a village, and of the girl who gave a beast a cookie and started a new chapter in the story of their world. Mira kept drawing, kept writing. She made books about Cookie and the stars and the sound he made when he was happy. She never called him a beast. She called him her first friend. The fields around Telra grew greener, the houses stronger, the walls lower, because no one needed to keep fear out anymore. Cookie still walked the paths at night, still watched the trees, still stood at the edge of the forest when the wind changed. But not because he was afraid, because he remembered, because he cared. One day Mira found him sitting near the broken pod deep in the woods, the place where it had all started, and he was holding something in his claws, a small stone with her name carved into it. She sat beside him and said thank you, and he made that soft sound again, the one that was almost a laugh. Almost. Then he looked at the sky, and so did she. They did not need words, because some friendships are bigger than words. Some promises are silent, and some monsters are never monsters at all, just protectors, waiting to be seen.